The Fey are the creature type with the most real-world folklore and history out of all the weird guys that D&D wants you to meet and greet. They have centuries of history and a limitless amount of sources of inspiration under their belt. And yet, D&D Fey fail to live up to even a fraction of the potential inherent in the folklore that inspires them. And today, we're changing that. I'm Antonio D'Amico, this is Pointy Hat, and I'm taking a closer look at the Tinkerbells already present in D&D, the Tinkerbells you can play as, the ones you can fight, the history that birthed them, and we're giving D&D a whole new Fey classification and brand new Fey monsters to bring to your games for 100% certified Pointy Hat free in this brand new episode of D&D with a twist. So when I think of Fey, I think of...
She was a fairy.
No, this is not deja vu. This is a brand new video. I've covered the Feywild, I've covered elves, but I haven't covered the Fey in general as a creature type. And I'm excited to, because boy do I have thoughts. I really like the Fey, and I really do feel they could shine so much brighter than they do. Let's see what we're working with. Fey and D&D are represented decently often. It's not fiends, it's not undead. Those are the D&D nepo babies of monsters and get like 40% of all monster entries. But the Fey get their fair folk share. Creature is a vague term for a reason, and Fey and D&D are very much that reason. Out of all the thingies in D&D that are put in the monster book rather than in the player book, Fey are by far the most people-y. Celestials are intrinsically connected to divinity, and many of them don't have a free will. The fiends are the opposite and are focused on maximizing the amount of bad time everyone is having. Weirdo aliens from outer space don't give people to me. But the Fey have little houses, little jobs, a Fey's nebulous idea of government. Just like their plane is a twisted mirror of the material realm, the Fey are a weird reflection of the normal people living in that material realm. This whole NPC-ization of Fey comes from the fact that the plane where they come from, the Feywild, is like a funhouse mirror of the material realm. That's what they mean by twisted mirror. Since the material realm has people in it, the Feywild does too. But those people are all up and far out, man. Welcome to the Fey's Twisted Mind. The main difference, other than the Feywild and the Fey looking like those 60s posters that very sober people drew and that I won in my apartment, is the Fey being assigned the neutral alignment, which is both for in-game and folklore reasons. In-game because the Fey are associated with nature, and nature in D&D is neutral and has been since the 70s, and folklore reasons because this tracks pretty consistently with portrayals in Western folklore of fairies. Fairies, generally, could not give less of a about what humans consider moral or immoral, ergo, neutral. The second main difference between normal people and Fey is magic, and how much baseline levels of magic is present in the people of each realm. Material realm, not much, not very magical, just normal, very chalant guys there. The Fey though, Pride Parade. Everything is a magical rave over there. Forever. You can really feel the humanization of Fey when you look at the amount of playable species available to you to make a blurbo with that are somehow related to the Fey. Even compared to the previously mentioned nepo babies, the Fey clear every single time when it comes to species. Goblins, centaurs, satyrs, hexbloods, changelings, fairies, all these are connected to the Fey. Whereas fiends get tieflings, and that's it. Undead get, the Dampier, kinda. That's kind of undead, and, Reborn! No, not that. The Reborn, remember? Remember the Reborn? No? Oh, well, not their video. Go watch this one when you're done. Since we're already talking about species, let's go first with that. What Fey can you actually play? And that right. You know what's coming? Numbers. Number 1, the Satyr. Satyrs have been in D&D since the very first edition, but they joined the 5e roster of playable characters with D&D's take on the Percy Jackson expanded universe, Odysseys of Theros, and then proved popular enough to get updated in Monsters of the Multiverse. Sorry to, what was their name? Leonens? Sorry to Mufasa, or whatever, because people didn't much care for the 72nd furry species. Satyrs' whole thing, true to satyrs in real life, mythology, fiction, not real, anyway, they like to party.
Dance.
These Kesha-inspired ungulates are natural-born ravers. They live to party. Satyrs are like halflings on speed. Maybe literally so. Probably. Their thing is hedonism, which if you know anything about the portrayal of satyrs in Greek mythology, this tracks. They live life for pleasure, which I happen to think is a very fun thing to roleplay. Our society is to me extremely far away from this conception of life. We're about delayed gratification. We work and we toil now to ensure pleasure in the future. And maybe not even future pleasure, just less pain in old age. Generally, we don't chase rushes, immediate joy, and we look down on those that do. Rather, we compartmentalize fun, quarter it, ration it. Satyrs don't. Satyrs live in the now, and the only work they do is to make the now sweet as honey and milk. Wouldst thou like that?
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Okay, how am I doing at the Fey thing? Anyway, what I'm trying to say with that is that satyrs, with their whole group parties and just normal parties in general, work perfectly to illustrate what makes them Fey. They have a different moral compass, a different way of seeing the world, and to them, comfort and pleasure are just everything. Whatever brings pleasure to an individual satyr is just the thing that individual satyr is gonna do, which is good if they take pleasure in helping others, playing music, eating good food, but I'm sure you can imagine how this can also lead to very dark paths. That's Fey's baby, alien morality, or that's what it should be. Feature-wise, and I'm using the most recent updated version of all of these, satyrs get an extra 5 feet of speed, which you just don't know how useful that is. That's massive. And other than that, they get mid features. Asterisk. They get a pretty chunky ram attack, but you gotta be going to a very specific strength build for that to matter even a little bit. And you get better jumping speed, which I'll just let you answer how useful that is based on how many times you've jumped in D&D, and proficiency in performance, persuasion, and the kazoo, or some other equally annoying instrument, or the pan flute, if you're boring and love stereotypes. Performance is neck and neck with animal handling as the worst skill in D&D, but persuasion is always useful, and an instrument is as useful as a tool proficiency is ever gonna get, so go nuts with that flavor. Overall, bad. Features-wise at least. Either situational, useless, or build dependent other than that 35 feet of speed. I guess if you're going for a strength-phase character that jumps a lot and goes unarmed, it just feels uninspired for such an iconic mythological creature. But what are we gonna do? And speaking of icons, number 2, the Fairy.
I'm a butterfly, you just never see my energy.
It's what it says on the tin. Fairies are little humanoids with wings. That's sure what they are. I'm sure someone out there with a name like XOXO Night Queen Morgana 666 XOXO is absolutely molding in the comments right now about how fairies are not that, but they are in popular culture, and that should also be represented in the game, perhaps more so. There's a clear player fantasy of playing this exact type of character, little tiny insect wing thing, and D&D is here to satisfy those players' fantasies. Disney made 311 Tinkerbell movies for a reason. The fairy girls want to be a fantasy bug lady. Lore-wise, this is a mom book original, so we get the most anemic lore ever. They're specifically said to resemble small elves and speak Elvish, which kinda points to them being related. Elves originally came from the Feywild, so it's entirely possible. Also, elves are like Pokemon in that they have 7,000 regional forms, so very much a plausible theory, a game theory, if you will.
Thanks for watching.
We get nothing on culture and nothing on history, but we do get a vanity table to roll on to help you out in the 7 long hour character creation purgatory. The Venn diagram of people that play a fairy in D&D and people that spend at the very least 1 hour in character creator is just one circle, so this makes sense. According to this table, fairies can have bird wings, shimmering technicolor skin, a unicorn horn, or shimmering mist around you. Pause. I want to give my sincerest kudos to whoever wrote this. This is exactly what people that have this as a player fantasy wanted. Good job. I keep saying customization is the key to a species' success, and boy do these butterfly guys have sliders. Ability-wise, fairies are small, because hell will freeze over before D&D lets you play a tiny creature, and they get a flying speed and 2 spells and a cantrip. Druidcraft, which is the worst version of thaumaturgy, which is itself a worse version of prestidigitation, but it's still okay. Druidcraft is fine. Not great, but fine. Spell-wise, you get Fairy Fire, A tier spell, and Enlarge Reduce, S tier spell. Okay, I hate that I'm making this video because I don't see fairies in ban lists yet, probably because the people that ban stuff for being overpowered have not even considered it could be. I'm gonna let you figure out why, but boy are fairies strong. A flying speed and 3 spells that go from useful to very useful put you above tieflings and most other species. They're really good. And speaking of good, number 3, the Centaur.
Peter, the horse is here.
Me, I like my horse, my pony, my horse. Me, I like my horse, my pony, my horse.
Centaurs as a playable species originally came into D&D by way of Ravnica, which is a Magic the Gathering thing I'm not aware of, but it's a city, so I guess I like it. Comment below if you know what a Ravnica is. I think it involves guilds. Centaurs also popped in Theros, which makes sense. Greece is known for being roughly 22% centaur in modern day. There's a lot of like setting-specific lore that I just won't get into here because centaurs get another update in, yes, you guessed it, the mom book. It's here that they are specifically made Fey, and that's it. We get nothing else. I hope they stop with this no flavor at all approach to species because I hate it terribly.
Where's the flavor?
If we look at other settings, it's not particularly inspiring either, but it's something. They're connected to nature, which, you know, they're Fey, so water is wet, the sun will rise tomorrow, and they seem to be extremely gregarious. There's mentions of bands, of guilds, of groups, of familial units. I think it's fun world building to tie in the equine aspect of centaurs into their lore. It makes sense that horse people would structure themselves in groups because horses do that. This also makes them fiercely loyal yo. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would have made the centaur species a thing where you pick what animal your lower body is made of and world build around that. That sounds fun to me. Alas, no, it is just horse. So what can the horse do? Well, features-wise, these guys get 40 feet of movement. Yes, 40 at base. Level 1, no class. This is wild. I mean, it makes sense. Horse indeed go fast, but still really, really good. Of course, a martial build will always benefit more from speed than a spellcaster, and centaur is no different. In fact, basically all of their features are pushing you towards a martial build, which I don't love, but I'll get into that later. Charge gives you basically an extra attack if you move 30 feet in a straight line towards an enemy, which is just such a perfect example of mechanics working to express the flavor. Chef's kiss for this one. Anyway, couple this with the mobile feed and you get a war machine. You also get a hoof attack as a natural weapon for a bit of extra oomph. And for your one non-martial feature, a choice between 3 skills. Animal handling is, see the above comment on Satyr, but you also get nature or survival. I would pick nature unless your DM really loves traveling. I never like when a species pushes you into a specific build, but even I have to admit that in this case, it makes a scary amount of sense. I almost want to make a subspecies of centaur, maybe something based on deer, elk, gazelles, ungulates in general, that has more of a magical focus as like an alternative. Anyway, that's not the point of the video. So you can play a Fey. All right, we got it. Notice something about them though? They feel, for the most part, normal, right? All 3 of these options have the creature type Fey, sure, but what does that even mean? How are these any meaningfully different from creatures that don't have the creature type? What makes these guys feel Fey? That's my point. There isn't anything here that makes them feel that way. It's a sort of tell, don't show approach to the mythos of the fair folk. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Playing Fey is a newish development. Fey were originally conceived to be interacted with as NPCs, allies, or enemies. So let's see what kind of Fey you can throw in front of your players. Second list, you know by now. Number A. Hags. Okay, go to this little channel of mine, click on videos, and order them by oldest, and you'll see that the second video I ever made 3 years ago, time flies, but also it doesn't. I cannot believe it has been 3 years and we're less than 10k subscribers away from 500,000. Terrifying. Anyway, the second video I ever made was hags. Hags are my favorite monster in D&D. You probably don't know this because I've been really subtle about it. I could cry. You don't know how much I love hags. I'm the world's #1 hag fan, and trust that I will come back to hag. I've been racking my brain finding a way to talk more about them. It's the only thing I want to talk about. They spark joy. So I'm not gonna tell you to watch a 3-year-old video because I sounded like this. So here's a rundown real fast of my favorite evil grannies. Hags are Fey in a way that reminds you why people were scared of the Fey in the first place. They are evil grandmas that are not just grandmas anymore. He, him, hag. That's me. That's my mole guy. I found it. I could be a hag. Me? They look gross and crooked and spooky because beauty is good and ugly is evil, and that's what fairy tales say. And they can be pretty powerful. The thing about hags is that they delight in suffering, almost like it's their food source. They love when people around them are having just a generally very bad, not good time. If this was all of it, hags wouldn't be my favorite, but their thing is that they're not particularly aggressive. Don't get me wrong, hags will fight, but they would rather sell you on a bargain. A deal that somehow disadvantages you in the worst possible way. And if they do fight you, they are loaded with the most annoying possible spells and a way to get away if things are going south. They are smart. The bargains here are the important bit. Contrary to what their skincare routine would have you believe, hags are immortal. They are extremely knowledgeable and amass secrets and information, which makes it very tempting to enter one of their awful deals, which, once again, a hag will always twist to create as much suffering as possible, because that's what they do. They're schemers, they're plotters, they're fun, they're funny, they're perfect villains, and dubious allies. The storytelling opportunities that hags grant you are not matched by a single other monster in the monster manual. And look at all the colors and styles they come in. Look, we have Summer Swimsuit Hag, Spring Collection Hag, Evening Gala Hag, Aspen Winter Collection Hag, Athleisure Essentials Hag, and many, many more. Now available in all Pointy Hat department stores. All in all, for their weight in folklore in the tradition of storytelling as a whole, their insane potential to be just your own version of the favorite Disney villain of the Disney adult on your table, hags are just the best. And their focus on deals and contracts is interesting to me. Yes, you think I was gonna rework Fey and not take hags as the baseline? If you did, you don't know me. Anyway, a reason I think running hags might prove difficult is just how tricksy they are. The fact that by nature, they will have the tools to retreat to their lair where they hold Tupperware parties with 2 other BFFs of Doom and unlock their mystical magical lair action called Kill You Dead with a Gun doesn't make running hags easy. And on top of that, you kind of want to do some weird stuff when running ags. Like, what about the layer appearing first like this beautiful Fey court, all pink and Barbie-esque, only for all these flowers to reveal themselves to be carnivorous and deadly. And then, when all the illusions are stripped down and you're in the thick of the fight, you fight the hag at her actual hut along with the ladies' night gang. Okay, pause. I wrote that, went to Czepeku maps, and I could find maps for all of that. Already done. Why? Because there's more than 6,000 of them. Yes, the sponsor is Czepeku, and the sponsorships write themselves. Why? Because they literally have everything. And for running monsters like the Fey, all about illusions and stuff like that, their map variations for battle maps are perfect. Let's take that hag hut example. You have vanilla hag hut, spooky definitely strawberry jam ritual version, sakura kawaii anime first day of school flavor, and Baba Yaga. And like, I don't know, 10 more? Or more than 10? And that's per map. And there's more than 6,000 of them. And if you want to make characters, they've got their own token maker. Just make your guys with like a character creator, like video games. And if you have a party that loves sitting around talking about their feelings, I mean role-playing, you have scenes. So that those roleplay scenes are actually immersive. Look how pretty they look. And you can sign up for any of these individually, or if you sign up for 2, guess what? The third one is free. So if more than 6,000 maps, more than 2,000 scenes, and a whole ass character creator with 300 ready-made tokens sound good, go check out Czepeku. First link in the description. And speaking of scary flowers that eat you, number B, dryads. I feel like dryads don't get the attention they deserve, and I think it's because they're just not developed enough in the game for people to notice them. Dryads, like some of the most popular monsters in the monster manual, are not a D&D creation at all. They come from the Regina Georgia mythologies, Greek mythology. In the source material, they are bound to a specific tree, and they're just naked ladies, just like trees. They don't do much. They exist. They die. If the tree dies, they are sort of a creature made to be a damsel in distress, in that they have as many defense mechanisms as a tree, which means that nearly every story featuring them is about someone harming them. They do fare a little bit better in D&D though. They are also bound to one tree, one plant in the 2024 Monster Manual, but they can put up a bit of a fight defending it. They look like tree ladies, although now they can be tree guys, tree theys, just anyone. Trees are generally not known to be too fussy about strutting down the runway like the old Monster Manual description, so this makes sense to me. As to what they do in D&D, the answer is also not much. They vibe, they do Lorax activities, they speak for the trees. They get mad if you step on a leaf. It's incredibly baseline and I find it boring. We're not feeling very daring with these guys. They protect the tree that they're tied to, and that's that. If you're gonna use dryads, you have a very short window of time to use them for combat, since their CR is abysmally low, just 1. The new Monster Manual breathed new life into a bunch of intelligent and social monsters by giving you several stat blocks to use for them, but Dryad was just not among the lucky ones. They did get a table to give you ideas on what the tree could be, but that was the easy part. Trees and fantasies are a thing. Most often though, you're not gonna use them in combat. Dryads do end up basically serving the same role they did in mythology. As I said, fantasy loves trees, and dryads are a way to make the magic tree that you have to protect talk to you and give you a quest, and that's kind of it. I think that for a monster based on a mythological being with this amount of myth and legend attached to it, we can do better. What about different types of dryads depending on the type of tree? That's a real Greek mythology thing, by the way. A dryad of an apple tree is called an epimeliad. Daphne are dryads of laurel trees. That would solve our stat block issue. But I don't know, if we want to feel inventive, what about a mother dryad? What about a dryad that is a forest, not just one tree? What about an invasive plant dryad? Would that lead to plant politics? I don't know, the whole plant thing in D&D just seems so underdeveloped. It feels like there's just more to do there. A shame nobody is bothering. Moving on. Number C, blink dogs. Yes, these get a whole number. I love dogs so much, and I want to talk about dogs, so I'm going to talk about dogs. Did you know Fey have dogs? As a proud member of the dog militia in the Canid versus Feline Wars, I was extremely disappointed when we got a Tressum in Baldur's Gate 3 and not a blink dog, so I'm course correcting here. Also, Gale is 100% a dog guy rather than a cat guy. Like, come on. With Homeboy's insane abandonment issues, you think he wants an aloof and bitey scratchy thing around? Absolutely not. Not all wizards need to be cat people. Come on now. Ugh, I'm the only one that understands him. Anyway, blink dogs are Fey, and since we're focused so heavily on humanoid creatures for both monsters and species, I wanted to do a very non-humanoid one. The best thing that ever happened in the new Monster Manual is the new illustration for the blink dog, because Jesus Christ, why was the art direction here shrink-wrap jaundice creepy pasta monster? Anyway, can't rag too much on it, all dogs are good dogs. Also, look at this ancient art. Zoom on that tail, please. effervescent. Blink dogs are called that because they can teleport around, blink around. This, coupled with a natural speed of 40 feet, makes them extremely mobile. Imagine like a dog race of these guys. I think that a lot of people don't know is that they're quite smart. They have an intelligence of 10. That's just average intelligence of like a guy, just a normal human. You'll never see a blink dog in combat, or rather you shouldn't, because what kind of monster are you to put them in danger? But their bite has an average of 5 points of damage. If you're planning on using them, I would heavily suggest giving them pack tactics and making their teleport recharge on a 3 to 6 rather than a 4 to 6 to make them really annoying. The only reason that they don't have those two as is so that players can have them as pets, which was the right decision. Good job, Monster Manual. This thing should primarily be a pet, not a monster you fight. We also have next to nothing on lore for them, like in any edition. We know they are a staple in more civilized societies of the Feywild, especially centaurs, and they have some sort of legendary beef with displacer beasts. I love this. It makes sense, both being blurry, blinky things, but one being a cat and one being a dog. Panthers are solitary and dogs are social. It just works. I wish there was way more of this in the Monster Manual in general. It just makes everything feel more real. Also, the last piece of lore I have to share is that in 3.5, it was stated that blink dogs spoke their own language. Visualization of that, please. Effervescent. Okay, that's enough Fey. Notice a pattern though? The only ones that feel Fey to me here are hags. And that's it. I love blink dogs because they are dogs, but what is Fey about them? Dryads sure are nature-y, sure, but they almost feel like an elemental more than a Fey. This is a thing across the board in D&D. The Fey are supposed to be this morally alien, strange, mercurial beings that work under their own rules and are dangerous in a way that no other creature type is. And yet, the promise of that remains a promise, both on the player side and on the DM side. If you love Fey like I love Fey, this is not enough. We need a rework. We need a twist, if you will, and we're gonna give them one, using mythology as our baseline. Let's talk Seelie and Unseelie. Seelie and Unseelie are a Scottish way of classifying the Fae. Seelie, as a term, is much older, Middle English kind of older. The sort of, but not really Welsh equivalent also uses the same word for their own take on fairies, although Welsh fairy folklore doesn't really have a rigidly defined court system, or at least not to the extent that Scottish folklore does. Regardless of how old the term is, the classification aspect of it came later. It's pretty hard to put a specific date on folklore at all, because it's folklore, it's an oral tradition, but we have transcribes of tales referring to the Seelie court that date to the end of the 18th century, although the tales themselves are likely much older. And what is this thing about courts that I keep hearing about? Well, the actual classification is Seelie and Unseelie courts. Seelie court, once again, S-E-E-L-I-E, not silly, like silly string, the silly string court. The Seelie court is the most established one, whereas the Unseelie court is assumed to exist, but not particularly strongly represented in any piece of folklore. These courts are extremely loosely defined, but D&D uses them kinda. In D&D, we have the Summer Court, which roughly equates to the Seelie Court, and the Winter Court, which is the D&D equivalent of the Unseelie Court. In D&D, they are 100% inspired by like British ideas of what a court is, with like its own 2 queens, consorts, and the like. The actual folklore itself is much looser than that. So, what are they? Well, they're not evil and good, but they're not as morally alien as people with like glitter fairy profile pictures want you to think. Seelie means happy, blessed, and lucky, and Unseelie means the opposite. So yeah, it's not the good versus evil court. In truth, if anything, it's the less likely to be evil and the very evil court. Seelie fairies will help people they like, important distinction there, they like, but they also will 100% not help people they don't like, opting instead to lead those people off of cliffs, turn them into creative things, make them lose their way, have they run in circles in bogs until they pass out, and you know, just straight up kill them. By contrast though, Unseelie fairies are just bad. They're just bad. I've checked a ton of actual period sources, and yep, Unseelie fairies are pretty unanimously seen as abjectly evil, or at the very least, never helpful to people in need. A fun thing is that a lot of folklorists think that the whole Seelie as happy, lucky, pretty, popular fae is a euphemism to appease them. Just like how fairies are also called the fair folk, or the good neighbors. Even the Seelie, the supposedly good ones, are so flighty and dangerous that people refer to them with a compliment so as to not anger them. But Unseelie are just evil, that's it. I was surprised about this. I thought the distinction would be more meaty and interesting than this, but not really according to the reading I've done. If y'all have any sources that contradict this, drop them in the comments. I am interested, but I do mean actual sources, period sources, folklorist sources, not trust me bro sources, not XOXO Night Queen Morgana 666 XOXOXO Tumblr blog sources, because boy did I run into a lot of those while writing this video. Alright, enough folklore, we got it. Why am I telling telling you this? Well, because I plan on using it, but I don't plan on copying it. Just like D&D was inspired by folklore to make their own idea of fairies with the summer court and the winter court, I want to do that too, to make a fairy classification that serves our needs as players and DMs. So, how do I do that? Well, my goal here is simple. I want fairies to feel distinct from the people of the material realm. I want them to live up to their potential of these trickster beings that run on a completely different moral framework than us, and interacting with them can lead to extremely positive or extremely deadly outcomes as a result of this massive gulf in how we see the world. That's what's interesting about the Fey to me. So, how do I plan on doing that? Well, with blue and orange morality. Of course, I touched on this on the Feywild video, and that one has a whole free adventure in it if you want to check it out. Blue and orange morality refers to any moral framework that is completely alien to ours. They might have their own equivalents of evil and good, or at least concepts that serve the same purpose, but they are equivalents in their framework, not actual equivalents. This makes them extremely hard to interact with because they are operating from a set of rules we just don't understand. Basically, take the whole "the Fey are a twisted mirror of the material realm" and apply it to morality, what they see as good and evil. This makes it so that their laws, their values, their morals, all of those are different from ours, and creates just really cool characters and opportunities for adventure. I think this is the way because this is how folklore paints most Fey creatures. They are our neighbors, our good neighbors, but they don't speak our language. This feels way more Fey to me than what we have right now in D&D. So, what do I propose for our courts? Well, I'm gonna draw from folklore again, and after reading up on Irish, Scottish, and Welsh fairies, I came up with two great axes, also known as accesses, the plural of axes, deals and codes. What if Seelie and Unseelie is more of a set of beliefs, a way that some Fae see the world, a cultural understanding of what is right and what is wrong. But it just so happens that that cultural understanding is completely alien from ours because they come from basically a different universe. It's two distinct cultures within the realm of the Fae, with courts that uphold those beliefs. Seelie are often said to make deals with humans and treat with them. So what if that's what makes fairies that join the Seelie court tick? Seelie Fae honor deals, no matter what the deal is. Some do so because they are trying to trick you, so they find ways to twist the wording of the deal you've made to suit those nefarious needs, but some, like the brownie who cleans your house in exchange for food and shelter, enters deals because they see them as mutually beneficial, symbiosis. To a Seelie Fae, breaking your word, not agreeing to the terms of a deal, going back on the terms of a deal, that's their equivalent of evil. That's the most morally reprehensible thing you can do. That's where the blue and orange comes in. To them, their equivalent of good is to honor a deal. Their equivalent of evil is to go back on your word, even if you have the best intentions and reasons to do so. Whether the deal is fair, kind, or leads to suffering doesn't matter. That's left to the individual fairy. What is moral here is whether the deal is honored or not. Okay, what about Unseelie then? Well, looking at some of the Fae that are slotted into that court, I see a pattern. Codes. They follow a code. Redcaps feel like the most basic example of this. Little evil man that chooses a ruin and decides to practice DIY fabric dyeing on their little hats with whoever decides to come close to said ruin. But one that isn't evil and yet very feared and very fey are banshees. Yes, banshees are fairies in Irish mythology. I know that in D&D they're undead. Banshees appear whenever someone from whatever family has been assigned a banshee by the government mandated Banshee Institute is about to die. The banshee appears and cries over the future death of that member. That means that if you hear the cry of a banshee, someone in your family is going bye-bye soon, which makes them very much not someone you want to bump into, but not evil themselves. Since Unseelie fairies and folklore are said to not be able to be reasoned with, we can translate both that aspect and the behavior of Fae like the banshee or the redcap into the insistence on following whatever code they are governed by for our little Fae classification purpose. It could be a code of conduct that dictates exactly what they are allowed to do or not allowed to do, or what they must do. And the version of good for an Unseelie Fae is sticking to the code that they must follow, and their version of evil is going against the code that they are under. An Unseelie Fae, whose code is to kill anyone that harms a specific tree, taking pity on someone that used the branch of that tree to light a fire so that they can keep themselves alive in a snowstorm, would be, according to this twisted Fae understanding of morality, doing an evil act. They're basically an oath breaker. They broke their code. That's what in their culture is morally reprehensible. See what I mean? It's a completely different understanding of morality. Doing this allows you to slot Fae in categories that feel related to real folklore, but also give them a completely different understanding of morality that actually feels Fae-ish, and that you can use to confront players or to play a Fae yourself that feels different from just any guy. And if we follow the idea of Fae courts as something you opt into as a Fae, it also allows you to tell stories about the Fae that decide to leave the court or are forced to leave the court. I think that's pretty exciting. We can even draw from Yeat's classification of fairies. Since Since we just referenced the Irish Banshee, Yeats talks about trooping fairies and solitary fairies. Maybe fae that belong to either of the courts are trooping fairies, whereas solitary fairies don't adhere to either or have been ostracized from one. And they're seen by fairies of each court as basically immoral loose cannons that cannot be trusted. That's fun world building for DMs and fun motivation for your fae-themed PCs. But talk is cheap, and this channel is about giving people stuff for free. So what if we make 2 fae, one for each of these courts, for you to test this out with your player characters or your monsters if you're a DM? Yeah, why not? The video's not long enough as it is or anything. Okay, let's go. I want to move away from stereotypes for both courts. So for our Seelie representatives, let's make them a warrior. Moucherons are martial fae. They are martial fae and the Feywild's equivalent of sellswords. Except the Feywild doesn't do money, so they get paid in blood instead. Moucherons will lend their fighting prowess to whoever strikes a deal with them, and in exchange, they'll demand blood for payment. This seems like a pretty easy deal to maintain. Have a Moucheron kill someone, let them have that someone for dinner, and you're done. Profit. Vampire-like, mosquito-themed fae. Fun, but a Moucheron will have a person's worth of blood come nightfall, regardless of what happens that day. Lost a battle and struck a deal with too many Moucherons, so there are not enough corpses for all of them to feast on? The Moucherons will 100% turn on the side they are fighting for to feast. On the way to the battle you hire them for, but haven't fought anyone yet? Guess what? The Moucheron will demand their payment. Fought something, but that something doesn't have blood for the Moucheron to drink? Sorry, your dinner now. Imagine playing one of these. Just pick fairy as your species, and flavor it as a Moucheron. The deal you struck says that you gotta feed by sundown, and so far you've had no issues with meals, you found them. But what if you're in a situation where the only source for it is the party members you've grown to love? Will you break your deal? To a Seelie fae like you, that is tantamount to murder for us. See? Fun moral dilemmas from a completely alien perspective. It's such a cool roleplay prompt. And as a DM, imagine giving the party the choice of taking one of these guys with them. They would have an extremely powerful fae by their side, but if it goes south, they would have the same fae against them. Okay, so for our Unseelie one, I want to break tradition too, while keeping it to the idea of codes. So how about child rearing? If banshees announce death and mourn the future deaths of a family, mamshees appear when a new member of the family is about to be born. They're also known as godmothers and are behind the figure of the fairy godmother. The child they guard is sacred to them, and they'll raise said child, protecting them from all harm and healing it from disease. The mamshee will do this forever throughout the life of the child, regardless of how old they grow, because to a basically immortal mamshee, that person will never stop being a child. But the love of a mamshee is unconditional. That's their code, protecting that person. But because of that code, the love of a mamshee is unconditional. So they'll protect that child regardless of how wicked or evil that child turns out to be as an adult. Also, mamshees will bring down whoever they believe does not have the best interest of the child in mind. Of course, including the child's enemies, but also the child's parents, if what they believe is best for the child doesn't align with what the mamshee believes is best. And not just parents, not just enemies, but the child themselves. To a mamshee, mother knows best, and they'll always do what they know to be what's best for the child, whether the child wants the mamshee to or not. You've heard of evil stepmom. How about eternally loving and completely morally alien fairy godmother? This one is the most overt in showing how fae morality interacts with our concept of morality. We expect parents to disavow their children, especially if they're adults, when they turn out to be monsters. But these fae wouldn't. They care for that child because that is their code. It's unconditional love to a terrifying degree. Imagine playing someone that is under the protection of one of these guys, and that fae is incredibly supportive of your PC until you decide to do something they disagree with. This is a person, fairy, whatever, that has looked out for you and helped you and assisted you since birth. Can you really ask them to break the code that is basically sacred to them? Can you change their mind? Unseelie fae are famously impossible to argue with in this system we just cooked up. Sounds like a fun personal challenge for a campaign. A shame these two don't get to be real, since they're just examples. They would make for cool monsters with cool stat blocks and all. If you're a DM and want to use them, or a player and want to incorporate them into your character, good thing I am your mamshee, and I know what's best. And what's best for you right now is to get your stat block so you grow big and strong. The Moucheron is up for you to grab for 100% certified pointy hat free. I chose that one out of the two because they feel like the most combat centric out of the two. So have a blast. But what if you want to learn about the Feywild in more detail? Well, have this video all about the Feywild with a whole free adventure in it all about the plane of fairy. And if the whole moral question in this video sounds interesting, what about this video on D&D alignment? All right, don't step on any suspiciously cottagecore rings of mushrooms. Mwah!